Hey, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Happy afternoon. Like I said, we're going to do a lot more of these daytime streams. I'll be on again tonight as well, but we're going to do a nice afternoon stream. That's going to be fun. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and away we go.
Of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Hey, everybody. So welcome. Glad to have you here. So the way this works is I do my opening remarks. Then from there, I do a roll call, and then I spend the second half of the show answering your super chat questions. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, shoot me a super chat. I will write it down, and in the second half of the show, I will answer it. And often the second half of the show is where we, often the second half of the show is where we have a lot of fun because it's off the cuff, and I just kind of answer your questions. And that's where some of the great interactions that we have are. And I've been posting those great interactions on a new YouTube channel that I've set up called Caleb Maupin Videos, because if I just do videos too often on this channel, it will just screw up the notifications. So I have this other channel, Caleb Maupin Videos. So if you're looking for reactions, by all means, that's a great place to go. Go and subscribe to Caleb Maupin Videos for the latest reactions. And thank you, Jason Hunt, for that super chat. We got one question already, but keep them rolling in because that's the second half of the show. We'll have another show tonight. This is an afternoon stream. Shout out to everyone watching from Europe, right? This is a great time for those of you in Europe. When I do my late night streams, you all are sleeping or about to wake up in the morning. Whereas, I do a nice early afternoon stream. It's just after 1:40 here in the United States. That's much easier for all of you. So, yeah, that's how we do things. I've got an afternoon stream here. I think for today's opening remarks, I'm not going to get too much into current events. I'm going to save that for this evening. I want to talk about Carrie Lake and her apparent loss. I want to talk about the layoffs at Amazon. Can you believe this? 10,000 Amazon workers losing their jobs. Don't tell me they weren't waiting until after the election. They were waiting until after the election. Wow. 10,000 Amazon workers getting laid off while Jeff Bezos lives in luxury from their labor. Unbelievable. We're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard and some of her latest pieces. We're going to talk about Joe Biden's horrific remarks in Bali and at the G20. We got a lot of different things. We're going to get to that tonight. It'll be tonight that we talk about current events. So if you want to hear current events, be sure to tune back in tonight. That's when we're going to be talking about it. This afternoon, I thought I might have a little bit of fun talking about politics and ideology and ideological heritage, because all of that is very, very important. A lot of people have tried to figure out where I'm at. I have looked at different assessments of who I am politically, of who the Center for Political Innovation is, what its roots are. I've looked at different assessments of it, and people don't quite know what to make of us. People don't quite know where we came from. They're very perplexed by it. And I guess I just want to start out. I'm going to pour the unnamed diet beverage. I'm going to pour the unnamed diet beverage. I'm going to drink some of the unnamed diet beverage. Now, One of the problems I've always noticed on the left is that no one's allowed to just exist. In leftist circles, if a new socialist organization emerges, a new communist or socialist group emerges, everyone wants to know who they are. And the question is always, where did you come from? Who are you a split from? You can't just be a socialist group. You have to be a Trotskyist. You have to be a Maoist. You have to be a breakaway from the Communist Party. You have to be a breakaway from the Socialist Workers' Party. You have to be a split from the Workers' World Party. You have to be a split from the Revolutionary Communist Party. Everyone wants to do this family tree thing to determine who you are as a socialist or a communist. You can't just exist. You have to be a split from a split from a split. You have to be able to draw a family tree for any communist organization. Every communist group has to have a family tree. And, I used to find this stuff really, really fascinating. When I was in high school, at first I didn't even know there was a communist party in the United States. Everyone had told me that communism had failed everywhere it's ever been tried. No one believes in communism. So when I got interested in communism, I assumed I must be the only person. And then I discovered on the internet, this fancy new invention back then, there was indeed a communist party in the United States. And then I found out there's like 200 communist parties in the United States. And there used to be this website called the Red Encyclopedia. It's no longer in existence. And it had, profiles of the different communist groups. I found it fascinating, utterly fascinating to learn which group split from which group and which group did this and which group did that and all of the history of the different communist organizations. I found it to be really, really fascinating. I spent a long time studying it. I was just fascinated, and I was interested in all the rumors and gossip about the different groups and the strange positions that groups take. This group wants to legalize pedophilia. This group, supports North Korea, and this group maintains that Fidel Castro is an unconscious Trotskyist. I was so interested in all of that inside baseball, all that obscuranta, all that trivia about leftism, about the movement. I found it all to be really, really fascinating, and I was fascinated by it. And I used to go to anti-war rallies, and I used to go to conferences, left-wing conferences. I went to the U.S. Labor Against the War conference. I went to the U.S. Social Forum, the one they did in Georgia, and then I went to the next U.S. Social Forum, the one they did in Detroit. And for me, it was almost like a scavenger hunt. I was, it's like, wow, there's the Workers' Combat Fight Back League. I've only ever heard about them on the internet. And oh, wow, there's the Maoist Internationalist Movement. No one's ever seen. And it was almost like a scavenger hunt. It was fascinating to me to look for the different obscure political tendencies and where they are and who they are, to talk to people from different groups. It was entertaining. And I'm at the point where I'm not really that interested in that stuff anymore. It took me a while. It's a rabbit hole you can go down for it's a really deep, complex rabbit hole you can get consumed in, and it's really complex, and to know what group split from what group and what divisions happened and what newspapers were put out by who and who. It's a very, very complex rabbit hole. But I'm at the point I'm not really interested in it. I really am not. And on top of that, most of these groups don't exist anymore. It's weird. In the last 10, 15 years, really since Occupy Wall Street, since Obama got elected, this big subculture in America called the communist left has largely fallen to pieces. The Party of Socialism and Liberation is still around. Democratic Socialists of America has absorbed a lot of groups into it. They function within the DSA. There's a couple, there's Socialist Alternative. There's a couple like Maoist clubs that have been started on college campuses by kids that are LARPing for Gonzalo. But really, the left, the thing that we used to know of as the left, this, collection of people selling newspapers and factions of factions of factions that split from, It's gone. You know, a lot of them, it was a boomer thing. A lot of them have died. A lot of them have just gotten old and died. And the internet has changed things. And it just, you know, people don't join groups anymore. It's one thing people have pointed out. People don't join groups like they used to. And that doesn't just apply to politics. People don't join churches like they once do. People don't join veterans organizations like they once do. People don't join, you know, lodges. People don't join the Elks Club or the Moose or the Masons or the Knights of Columbus like they used to. That you know, we have become an online isolated society where people don't join groups, number one. And then number two, you know, these groups don't really very much have a place within leftist politics. Their views, you know, don't fit in. The woke left has really no interest or place for these kind of groups. I think the Spartacist League hasn't put out an issue of their newspaper in a couple of years. The group still exists. They still have a website, but they haven't put out a newspaper in a while. And, you know, there was the International Bolshevik Tendency and the Internationalist Group. And it used to be you would go to anti-war rallies. You know, you go to a protest against the war in Iraq, and there'd be like 15, 16, 17 different little tiny Trotskyite Maoist groups selling their newspaper. Not anymore. Not anymore. You know, I used to go down that rabbit hole. But one thing that annoyed me is when we started the Students and Youth for a New America clubs, which eventually gave birth to what's now called, you know, the Center for Political Innovation. We would go to events. You know, we went to a reception at the Cuban mission, mission to the UN. And I sat next to somebody. And she said, "What organization are you with?" And I said, "We're with Students and Youth for a New America." And she said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, we're a socialist communist organization. We got clubs at Rutgers University. We got a club, you know, at some colleges in Illinois. We got people in different places." And she's like, "Yeah, but who are you?" And I said, "Well, I told you who we are. We're socialists and communists. We support Cuba. That's why we're here at this event, you know." I mean, and then she pressed me, right? Pressed me a little bit. And then finally I said, "Well, I used to be in Workers' World Party. And this guy sitting next to me, he used to be in the American Party of Labor." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then she knew who we were. Well, the thing was, she didn't know who we were. The ideology that was espoused by Students and Youth for a New America, and the ideology that I espouse now, has very little to do. I mean, there's some overlap, I guess, but this ain't Marxism. This is not the Workers' World Party line. It's definitely not the American Party of Labor line. Me and this guy who was sitting next to me at the Cuban event, by her finding out, we had both, you know, we were both in our 20s. We were both young guys in our 20s. By them finding out that we had been in different groups, she still had no idea who we really were and what we believed, right? Students and Youth for a New America was the first attempt at some kind of patriotic socialism, right? It was the first attempt at trying to get out of the movement to the masses. We didn't even have that slogan yet. There was no slogan out of the movement to the masses yet. It was some understanding that the left was out of touch, that the Trump stuff had grabbed the enthusiasm, the populist anger at the capitalist crisis, and that we needed to kind of rebrand socialism to aim at the, you know, the broad masses of people, not the you know, nutty, isolated fringe left, and definitely not the wokeism, which is toxic. Well, that was it. And, you know, and by this woman, you know, saying, oh, I know who you are now. No, she didn't know who we were, right? She didn't really know who we were. And I've noticed that they don't have this on the right. On the ideological right, fascists, they don't have this issue. When a new fascist organization, a new far-right group emerges, nobody wants to know who they're a split from. The Proud Boys. No one's like, "Oh, the Proud Boys, are they a split from the American Nazi Party? Are they a split from the National Socialist Front?" No one cares. They're just the Proud Boys, right? You know, when the Patriot Prayer, this far-right group that operates in the Pacific Northwest, when they started, no one asked, "Oh, is the Patriot Prayer, are they a split from the John Birch Society? Are they a split from the Liberty Lobby of the American Spotlight?" No one asked that. They were just Patriot Prayer. And if people liked what Patriot Prayer was doing on the far right, they joined it. If they didn't like it, they didn't. Right? And that part of the reason that leftism, socialism, Marxism, and communism has gotten so confused. All right. part of the reason it's gotten so confused is because of this family tree, because of this this belief. It's almost like a religion. It is almost like a religion. It is really like a religion. If if a new church forms, you want to find out, are they Catholic? Are they Protestant? Okay, if they're Protestant, are they non-denominational? Are they It's like everyone has to draw this family tree. Everyone has to explain why, if Karl Marx were alive today, he would be in their organization. Everyone has to explain why they are the true inheritors of the First and Second and Third International, or maybe the Fourth International if they're Trotskyists. It's a weird thing. And in reality, I do not consider the Center for Political Innovation and the ideology that I espouse on these streams, I don't consider it to be the ideological heritage of Marx. I mean, I draw from Marx, I learned from Marx, but Marx would vehemently disagree with a lot of things I say on here. For one, I believe in God. Karl Marx did not believe in God. Karl Marx was a fervent atheist. I, on the other hand, believe in God. So Marx would not agree with me. If Marx were alive today, I doubt he would have a religious conversion, and I doubt he would see eye to eye with me on that issue, right? I mean, the same, Lenin also, right? Now, Lenin changed Marxism. I draw heavily from Lenin, but would Lenin agree with everything that I say and that the Center for Political Innovation says? Probably not. There are probably points on which he would disagree with us. And we're not trying to claim that if Lenin were alive today, he would be in our group, that we're the true interpreters. We're the true interpreters of Lenin's tradition. We're not trying to claim that. At our Lynn Valley Training School over the summer, I gave classes on the life of William Z. Foster and the life of Sam Marcy. And I noticed that there are some places on the internet where the Center for Political Innovation and myself are categorized as Marcyists after Sam Marcy. We are not Marcyists. I'll tell you that much. Watch the class. I'm highly critical of Marcy. And Marcy would vehemently disagree with a huge amount of what I say and do on these streams. The patriotism, he would never support that, right? The out of the movement to the masses stuff, he would never support that, right? Marcy was all about, race. He had an obsession with race. In the 1990s, the Workers' World Party supported O.J. Simpson. And not all of them even thought he was innocent. A lot of them just thought, well, the campaign against him is so racist, we have to support O.J. Simpson. The Workers' World Party, there's many cases that they supported where it was just because they had kind of a race obsession. They took some stances on issues, especially in the 90s, that were pretty crazy. And it was a race obsession. I am not obsessed with race. I'm anti-racist. I admire Minister Farrakhan. I admire Black nationalism. I always have. I always have admired Black nationalism. And I think, Black nationalists who love their people and love their communities, want to fight against capitalism, support anti-imperialist countries like Russia and China. I have a huge level of admiration for Black nationalism, but I don't have the race obsession that Sam Marcy and the Marcy tendency historically has had. I just don't have it, I didn't start the Center for Political Innovation until I'd been out of the Workers' World Party for 4 or 5 years, and our beliefs, and the way we practice the work that we do, is pretty different from what they do. I mean, Marcy and Sam Marcy is a huge influence on me, but I'm not a Marcyist by any means. William Z. Foster. I've studied William Z. Foster's life. I very much idealize him. I mean, I idealized him at one point much more than I do now. I really, really idealized him, especially when I first moved to New York City. And, I have all of his books and I studied his life. I've read every biography. I really look up to William Z. Foster. But that said, I'm critical of William Z. Foster as well. And there are some points where we don't agree. And actually, in more recent years, I've come to understand that in a lot of ways, William Z. Foster was heavily influenced by Sorrellianism and George Sorrell. And that doesn't get highlighted in a lot of the biographies of William Z. Foster. On top of that, I've realized that some of the negative attributes of the Communist Party USA and their kind of anti-intellectual culture, that's rooted in Foster, and that some of Foster's negative attributes, his obsession with action, which he got from Sorel, the cult of action, and there was kind of an anti-intellectual bent to the Communist Party during the 1930s, and that wasn't good. And there's a reason that the Communist Party was not a good home to a lot of left-wing and pro-Soviet intellectuals, because there was this cult of action that William Z. Foster had developed. So, I mean, I'm not a Fosterite. I'm not a Marxist. I'm just somebody who's trying to build a socialist movement in America. I'm not even really trying to build a socialist movement in America. I'm trying to do socialist education. I'm trying to teach people about the history of Marxism and socialism. I'm trying to get people to break with the synthetic left. I'm trying to get people to understand that we can fight for jobs and housing and education. I'm trying to get people to understand that Russia and China are not our enemies, that the enemy is U.S. imperialism. And I'm going to draw from various histories. Am I a Maoist? I get called a Maoist a lot. I'm definitely not a Maoist. I disagree with China's foreign policy during the last years of Mao's life pretty strongly. I think the Cultural Revolution was a nightmare. And the Gang of Four, the way they ran things, and the Cultural Revolution was a disaster. And I think the Chinese Communist Party, when they ended the Cultural Revolution, when Deng Xiaoping came to power, that was a great step forward, because it ended some of the nightmare and the horror of that period. And that, that socialism with Chinese characteristics, and now what Xi Jinping is doing, is a great advance over what was going on during the Mao years. I think Mao was a political genius. I think Mao was a brilliant organizer. I think he's going to be remembered on the level of like one of the most effective and dynamic political figures in human history. I mean, what he did. But am I a Maoist? I wouldn't call myself that. I draw heavily from Mao's methods and practices, but I'm critical of Mao as well. And there are things about Mao that I don't like, and that we need to be able to be more eclectic on the left. We need to be able to be more eclectic on the left. We need to be able to just take what we need, take what we can, learn what we can from various revolutionary movements around the world. And that's it. I always tell people we should study all revolutionary movements, all of them, even the ones that fail. If there's a revolutionary movement somewhere that completely fails, we ought to study it and find out why it failed. There's a revolutionary movement around the world that's successful. We ought to study it, find out why it's successful. Study Mao, study Fidel Castro, study Peter Kropotkin and anarchism, study Trotskyism, study Rosa Luxemburg, study social democracy, and learn from the successes and the failures of all the various revolutionary, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist movements around the world. Criticize them all. Study all of them, but blindly follow none of them. But study them with the intention of figuring out and crafting together how we can get something done in our time, in our own country. That's what we should be doing. Study all of them, blindly and dogmatically follow none of them, and the whole time trying carefully to figure out, through a process of practice and trial and error, as well as through a practice of study, how we can figure out how to make some kind of working class revolutionary movement in this country to get us beyond the horrors of capitalism, to get us into a new society where the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power are organized to serve the people and public good and not the profits of a few. And, such a movement obviously would have to draw heavily from Marxism-Leninism and the history of Marxism-Leninism. However, if you look at the revolutionary movements around the world that are fighting against capitalism and imperialism, most of them now are not, explicitly full-on Marxist-Leninist. Bolivarian socialism, right? Chinese communism. Marxism-Leninism is their ideology. Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, Xi Jinping's thoughts for building a socialist society. I mean, this is not pure Marxism-Leninism. This is an adaptation and an adjustment for their time. Juche ideology that they have in North Korea, the teachings of Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il and Kim Jong Un, the Islamic socialist revolutionary movements of the Middle East, and Shia Islam and the axis of resistance. That ideology, that worldview that's guiding resistance movements like the Houthis in Yemen, resistance movements like the people in Lebanon that are fighting against U.S. imperialism, the Islamic Republic of Iran that's facing all-out attack. These are movements that we can learn from. Now, am I a Muslim? Have I converted to Islam? Of course not. I'm a Christian. But is there things we can learn from the revolutionary Islamic movements of the Middle East? Sure. Right? African socialism, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, all of these traditions we can learn from. Gaddafi. I've published my own edition of the Green Book, for Christ's sakes. That if we want to actually figure out a model for the United States that can actually work, we have to break with the dogmatism. We have to break with the idea that we're going to find the perfect ideology, right? We are going to become Marxist, Leninist, Hojaists. We're going to become Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyists. We're going to have the correct ideology, and we're going to put on the right costumes, and we're going to mouth all the right slogans, and everything's going to change. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. And if we are going to see socialism come to the United States of America, we have to be able to study all kinds of different revolutionary movements around the world, learn from their successes and from their failures, and craft a unique, effective model to actually change things in America. It won't be easy. It will not be easy. And it's not easy. It's quite difficult. However, that's the road to power. If Mao had just copied what the Soviet Union did, they never would have had socialism. Mao had the brilliance to understand that the peasantry were going to make the revolution. He developed his own method for building the party, for building the army in the countryside, rural people's war. He had his own everything that made Chinese communism successful. Everything that made it successful was the unique innovations of the Chinese communists for their unique circumstances. Bolivarian socialism, again, the communists were part of it. The national capitalists were part of it. The religious currents were part of it. The different political forces were part of it. And Bolivarian socialism that has arisen in Latin America has largely been the result of collective efforts, but reinvention and reapplication of socialist organizing methods to Venezuela, to Bolivia, to Nicaragua, right? They did it in a unique way in order to get the job done. You could say the same for Ba'athist Arab socialism. You could say the same for Islamic socialism in Libya. You could say the same thing for the Shia Islamic revolutionary currents of Iran and Lebanon and Yemen. I mean, there are different applications, but all of them draw heavily from other sources. I mean, I've used this example before, but the Islamic Revolution of Iran, very anti-Marxist, very anti-communist, very, very anti-communist, right? They reject Marxism. They view Marxism as atheistic, as foreign and such. But there's a heavy Marxist influence on the Islamic revolutionary tradition. So much so. Great example. After the Islamic Revolution, when the Iraq-Iran war got going, Khomeini, the leader of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, called forth a construction jihad. That's what he called it, construction jihad, where he called for the people of the country to go out and build. It was a 5-year plan. It was Stakhanovism. This comes from Stalin. Well, he didn't call it a 5-year plan. He didn't call it Stakhanovism, but it was pretty clear that the construction jihad that he mobilized was the same kind of thing that Stalin did with the 5-year plans. Rapidly industrialize the country so we can defeat the enemy, right? The Basij councils. Again, the Basij councils. It's pretty clear that the idea of having local committees to enforce the revolution and its goals, that's inspired by the Soviets of the Soviet Union. That's inspired by the committees to defend the revolution, the CDRs. they have in Cuba, right? Or the Bolivarian circles that they have in Latin America, or the Citizens Power Councils they have in Nicaragua. I mean, these are methods that are successful. And if you're leading an Islamic socialist revolution, if you're leading a Bolivarian revolution, if you're leading a Marxist-Leninist revolution, you're going to apply similar methods, but you're also going to try to not make the same mistakes. Revolutionary movements, revolution is supposed to be scientific. And this is wild, because it's like my worldview is at this point less materialist and scientific than a lot of Marxists. I do believe in God. I do believe in the power of ideology. I do believe in the power, like willpower, and people's ability to make sacrifices and go out and be motivated by ideas and such. I believe in certain concepts that are quite non-materialist. But yet, when it comes to how a revolutionary movement should operate and how a revolutionary movement should function, my beliefs are more scientific. I'm not trying to mutter the correct magic words. I'm not trying to say, well, we must follow the true doctrine of the true revolutionary forces of the true era. I'm not stuck there, right? I'm trying to figure out what works, what will work in our time, and what won't. What can we learn from here? What can we learn from there? And we need to learn, if we're going to be successful, if things are actually going to change in America, we need to learn to be eclectic. We need to learn to do this. We need to learn to study all kinds of revolutionary currents. And in fact, we even need to learn how to study different currents in America. You know, I look at all the different communist groups in America, right? They all suck. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. They all suck. My apologies to anyone who's in one of those groups, but they all suck. I'm sorry. If any of those groups didn't suck, we would be in a very different situation right now as a country. All of those groups suck, all right? None of those groups have accomplished anything in 50 years. And I've pounded the podium about, the Communist Party sucks, and the PSL sucks, and the Workers' World Party sucks, and the Revolutionary Communist Party sucks, and I okay. And I can do that. I can say that over and over and over again. But at the same time, for those groups to even still exist right now, and this is a hard thing for a lot of people to realize, for the PSL to even exist in this kind of political atmosphere where groups are dying left and right, there must be something that they can do right. For the Revolutionary Communist Party to still exist in this political atmosphere where groups are just falling apart, where people don't join groups, where the internet is tearing everyone apart, for them to even still exist, there must be at least one or two or three things that they can do right. The Communist Party, for the Communist Party to still exist in this political atmosphere, there must be something that they're doing right. And as much as I want to point out what is obvious, that none of these groups are a model to copy, none of these groups are having the success that's needed, none of these groups are building up a base among the population, none of these groups have influence over the American political process. They all, in order to still exist, to not have gone the way of the dinosaur, like most socialist and communist groups have in the past couple decades, there must be something. Good question. There must be something that they're doing right. Right? And that is something we can learn from. Because we're living in this bizarre death agony of liberalism, where the only thing that people want to organize around is looking at their phones. I mean, I'm guilty of it right now. How many of you are watching me right now on your phone? And that's fine. I'm glad to be on here because I'm reaching you, right? If this was 10 years ago, I would have rented a classroom and put up leaflets telling people to come to the event, and there'd be 5 people here watching me. Well, now, because I didn't do that, and because, I'm sitting here in my my home office and I'm on the internet, there's a lot more than 5 people watching. So we've updated, but really at the end of the day, they want the only thing that people organize around to be this, and they have it rigged. It's completely rigged. It's completely rigged. Social media is rigged. Social media is rigged. YouTube is rigged. Twitter is rigged, right? It's rigged. And certain people get promoted and certain people don't. How do you think BreadTube, these people no one have ever heard of, no one's ever heard of these people, but out of the blue, they become the voice of socialism on the internet? Well, obviously it's rigged. right? I mean, the internet is rigged, but we're still on here. We're still doing our thing. And because we have a decent product, people still keep coming around. And so, of course, they've thrown everything they can at us. I am pure evil. I'm an evil cult leader. I'm an evil brainwasher. I'm an evil Nazi. Even though I'm anti-racist, I'm racist. Even though I'm in favor of women's rights, I'm sexist. I mean, they've thrown everything to the kitchen sink at me. But I'm still here, and there's still people watching because they feel like we have a good message. We're getting good stuff done here. Well, I would like to take this more than just being an entertainment program. I'm looking for people that want to build an actual movement. That's why we had events over the summer. That's why we had a conference in Chicago. That's why we had a conference, a training school in Lynn Valley, Kansas, right? I'm trying to get shit done. I'm trying to actually, organize a real movement. But it's not easy. It's not easy in this time. But if we're going to actually accomplish what we want to accomplish, if we're going to actually build a kind of movement that can have an impact on U.S. history, we need to be looking at what other forces are doing and learning from their successes, learning from their failures, while trying to figure out what we can do in order to achieve our goals. It's pretty basic, but if you're stuck in this live action role play, if you're stuck pretending you're Lenin, you're never going to do that, right? And that's the problem, is that for a lot of people, this is some kind of weird live action role play game. For a lot of people, this is some kind of fantasy football. I don't know what it is, but they're pretending that they are revolutionaries. They're trying to apply the principles of the book. So, they think they're a character in a movie or something. They're not going to accomplish anything. And, when I say out of the movement to the masses, I mean, stop being this fringe leftist element and start being a factor in everyday American life. Start being something that average Americans, working class Americans, turn to for political leadership and guidance. Out of the movement to the masses. We're no longer a fringe element. We're no longer an ultra left, this weird thing that exists on the fringes of American society. But we're actually a current that is offering political guidance and leadership to real Americans, the broad masses of the American people. That is something we should aspire to do. But doing that requires political innovation. Doing that requires breaking out of the protest cage and getting to the broad masses of people. That's what it requires. It requires actually learning from successes and failures. It requires crafting the message in a way that's actually winning and wins people over and supports people. And, that's what it requires doing. And a lot of what CPI started out as was just a call for basic political professionalism. Basic political professionalism. And if someone's running for the presidency of Brazil, do they say, fuck Brazil? No. They say Brazil's a great country, and we've got a program to make life better in Brazil. People are running for the presidency of Argentina. Do they say, fuck Argentina? I hate Argentina. I want to burn Argentina down? No. They put forward a program to make life better in Argentina. However, the left is so insane. The movement is so nuts and so bonkers that if you say, I love America and I've got a program to make America better, they go, that's Nazi. You're a Nazi. Seriously. I mean, if you think that there's any future for a political movement in America whose message is fuck America, you're nuts. You're off your rocker. You are completely insane. People are not going to vote to destroy the country in which they live. Yes, people may want to reform and change the country they live. They may want a revolution to have a new social order in the country in which they live. But if your message is fuck the country in which we live, no one is going to support you. It's just basic. You're not a serious political force in the country. If you live in America and your message is fuck America, you are not a serious political force in America. You are declaring that you want to be fringe. That's all it is. I mean, you are just saying, I don't want to have an impact. That's what you're saying. And I mean, and some of these people are honest about that, right? The Maoist third worldist types that think there is no hope, that think average Americans are the enemy, average Americans are pigs. At least they're honest about it, right? They don't want to have an impact. They don't think it's possible to have an impact. They're socialist incels, right? They can never get a girlfriend ever, right? There's no way they could possibly ever get a girlfriend. So they're going to build this whole worldview based on the fact they could never get a girlfriend. Or in this case, there's no way we could ever build a socialist movement. There's no way we could ever get America to go to socialism. So we're going to build a whole worldview centered around the idea that Americans are all pigs and exploiters of the third world who will never be one to our ideology. And, okay, well, at least they're honest about it. I mean, they are honest about it. That is what they think. Most of the so-called communist movement thinks the same thing. They just don't have the intellectual coherence to admit it. If you think waving an American flag is Nazi, if you think the message of the left needs to be fuck America, destroy America, you're not a serious political force. You're never going to win an election in America. You're never going to build a mass base among the American population if your message is fuck America. Now, obviously, for black nationalists, it's different, right? For black nationalists that argue that black people are a colonized people within U.S. borders, that say we're not Americans, right? Malcolm X said, we're not Americans. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. That's different. They are speaking to a group of people that are an oppressed nation. And, and you'll notice they don't want to win over the broad masses of Americans. They want to win over black people. And their message isn't fuck black people. In fact, it's very positive on black people. They're just saying that we, as black people, don't identify as Americans. That's different, right? That is very, very, very different. But if your message is to win over people who identify as Americans, your message cannot be fuck America. And I mean, this is just like basic politics. I mean, it's not that complicated. I mean, it just seems pretty basic, I mean, it's just 101. If you are aspiring to be the leader of America, your message should not be fuck America. Your message should be America has a lot of problems, and we're going to get in there and fix America's problems. Here's our program. Here's what we advocate to make life better in America. That should be your message. Whether you're a conservative, a liberal, Democrat, libertarian, whatever. If you're a serious political force, your message needs to be, I love the country, I love my community, I love my state, and I have a political program. If you give me political power, I will take action in order to make life better in the country. Very basic. Very, 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 very basic. And if people, their response to that is not just you're wrong, Caleb. It's not just, oh, you can't wave the flag. That's the symbol. No, it's like that based on that, I must be an admirer of Adolf Hitler pretending to be a communist. People that are that deranged have no serious political future, no serious political aspirations. That is deranged. The level of deranged that it takes to say, I'm saying this, I said, all I ever said when I started Students and Youth for a New America was our message should be that we want to make the country better. We should wave the flag. We should show that we don't want to destroy America, that socialism and getting out of imperialism and building a government of action that'll fight for working families will make America better. And in response to that, people said, clearly, you are somebody who denies the Holocaust and wants to murder all people of color. And it wasn't just one person who said this. It was like the whole leftist internet decided it's undisputed fact that even though Caleb is married to someone who is not white, even though Caleb has been arrested in police brutality protests, even though Caleb videotaped the police beating up 2 young African-American women and got them acquitted in court and documented an act of police brutality, even though even though Caleb risked his life on a ship trying to get to Yemen to stop, to aid the people of Yemen as they're facing a U.S.-backed Saudi bombing campaign. No. Clearly, because he said to wave the American flag, because he said that we should have a message that is, we want a better America for working families. I clearly am someone who advocates genocide of all brown people and denies the Holocaust and idealizes Adolf Hitler. I mean, these people literally believe this, right? And they literally believe this. And Ben Norton on his streams, he insists, and Brian Becker, and they insist, no, it's true. Patriotic socialism is Nazism. It's National Socialism. These people are nuts. I mean, they are absolutely bonkers. They are utterly nuts. How do you interact with somebody who's that out of touch with reality that they think, oh, somebody who waves the flag, they must be Nazis? I mean, and it's like, do I want to organize people like that? Do I want to recruit people like that to my organization? Do I want to pander to those people? Should I be worried? Should I be worried that people like Brian Becker and Ben Norton don't want to join my organization? Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it's like, should I be afraid? Oh God, I better not talk this way. I'll alienate people that are that insane. People that have gone out of their way to relegate themselves to political irrelevancy. One of them has even gone to another country, right? I mean, and he doesn't even understand the country he's living in, right? He's living in Nicaragua, a country with some of the strictest anti-abortion laws in the world, and he's tweeting out that anyone who wants to overturn Roe versus Wade is an evil right-winger. It's like, what country are you in, you fucking idiot, right? And I mean, those Sandinistas, they aren't patriotic at all, right? That would be like Hitler. I mean, he's a fucking idiot, right? But that people that have relegated themselves to being this out of touch and this marginal, why should we pander to them? I mean, why should we be worried? Oh shit, I want those kind of crazy people to join me, not the PSL. No, PSL can have them. Do you think that anyone who waves the American flag is the equivalent of a Nazi? And that if we have a message of we want a better life for America's working families and socialism will make a better life, that makes us the same as Nazis? I don't want to work with you. Neither do the American people. Most people don't want their home country to burst into flames and get destroyed. Most people don't want their community to be filled with, violence and drugs and instability and chaos. Most people just want a better life. Most people just want a decent life for themselves and their children. That's what most people want. And if socialism is ever going to be successful as a movement, it needs to appeal to people who want that, people who want a better life for themselves and for their children. That's pretty basic stuff, but the left is nuts. And the reason the left is nuts is because it's been engineered. It's not intended to serve its stated purpose. When people are out burning the American flag, when people say their desire is to destroy America and to destroy America, this country is inherently evil, they're not really about taking power. They might think that. And it's kind of sad that they think that. But at the end of the day, they're not really about taking power. They're serving another purpose. They're serving another purpose. And for the most part, that purpose is to help the richest of the rich, the ultra monopolies, the big capitalists, the finance capitalists, crush the resistance of the lower level capitalists. When you talk about globalism, right now, it's very clear that the higher level capitalists, the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Silicon Valley, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Morgans, the higher levels of capital very much want to dissolve the United States into their open international system. They want the U.S. economy, the domestic U.S. economy, to crumble. They want the domestic U.S. population to drastically shrink. And they see the United States as just a trading hub, as just Los Angeles, and New York City, just a trading hub in their global financial empire and their Atlanticist open international system, where they have a huge military and they have the huge banks and they control the trade routes and they control the credit, and anyone who wants to do business has to do business through them, and the world keeps getting poorer and the population keeps dropping and they keep enriching themselves. That's what they want. Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism by Lenin. That's what they want. They want to stay on top of the world and push the world into deeper and deeper poverty, deeper and deeper austerity, so that they stay as the global middleman at the center of all of it. That's what they want. That is what they want. And it makes them mad that China has lifted 800 million people out of poverty. It's become a prosperous country. It used to be the sick man of Asia. It makes them mad that Russia became a superpower that defeated the Nazis and won the Second World War and invented space travel. And then after it collapsed in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Putin fixed it and rebuilt it and made it a power that is strong enough to withstand all of the vicious attacks going on against them. Makes them mad that Chavez wiped out illiteracy in Venezuela, built all kinds of infrastructure, built up that population. Makes them mad that Cuba used to be this impoverished island that was a gambling resort for the mafia, and now it's turned into a country that is the admiration with its healthcare system of the entire world, and admired for its achievements, lifting people out of poverty and life expectancy and infant mortality rates. Makes them mad that Nicaragua, again, another country that was just one of the back pocket colonies of Wall Street, has broken free and become an independent, strong country. It makes them angry. They want the world to stay poor. And for a while, they wanted to build up an aristocracy of labor in the homeland. They wanted to build up, this middle class of American industrial workers. That was part of maintaining their empire, was having a stable layer of people at the center. That was how they ran their empire. Not no more. Not no more. Now they don't need that aristocracy of labor. Now they don't need that comfortable middle class, that comfy, cozy middle class that used to define the American dream. They don't need it anymore. They do not need it anymore. And because they don't need that comfortable middle class anymore, the folks who would fight for such a thing, the folks who would get in the way of their efforts to build an impoverished, low-wage police state on the ruins of what was once the United States of America, middle Americans that say, we will not be canceled, we will not, surrender, we're going to push back, they're a problem. And those folks are a problem. Those folks are considered, for the most part, to be right-wing, Trumpers, whatever. And they want them to go away. So they've built this mob of crazy people that say, fuck America. America was never great. Burn it down. Tear it down. You're racist. And they've got this mob of people that it's like they're a attack dog to help them in their process of dissolving the United States into their global imperialist system. That's all they want the left to be. They want the left to be their hit squad, their goon squad that they can unleash when they need it. That's what it is. That's what they need. That's what they've got. And if you can understand that that's not a serious political movement, that's not going to bring socialism to America. A group of crazy people that say burn it down, tear it down, is not going to make life better in America. If you can understand that, if you can understand that most socialists and communists are just being used, they're just, puppets, they're just foot soldiers in the efforts of the big capital to destroy the United States, you got to understand that if we want to be serious about politics, if we actually want to bring socialism to America, we have to completely change our orientation. We have to talk a different way. We have to put forward a message that is very, very different. If we're going to be politically serious, we have to talk differently. And that requires us to, yes, wear suits. That requires us to not be hostile to religion. That requires us to not be unpatriotic and give the impression we want to destroy the country. That requires us to put forward real solutions. Real solutions. Right? We had that 4-point plan, the Center for Political Innovation. 1, a mass program to rebuild the country, rebuild the infrastructure, new highways, new bridges, new high-speed railway, new universities, new schools, hire the unemployed to rebuild the country, give America a high-tech upgrade. How are you going to pay for it? Step number 2, public control of our natural resources. America's oil, America's natural gas, America's coal, America's timber should be the property of all Americans. And the property made by the coal and the oil and gas beneath our feet should go into the public budget, not into the pocket of a Wall Street banker or a big corporation. Instead, the natural wealth of America should be used to make a better country for all Americans. Step number 3, public control of money. Maybe communism's too radical for you. You don't want to read Marx. You don't want to read. You don't want to read the writings of Lenin or Stalin. Go and read the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution says that only the federal government can print money. But now a private corporation called the Federal Reserve is printing our money. Maybe communism's too radical for you. Go and read the Bible. Go and read the Quran. Go and read the Torah. Every major religion forbids the lending of money at interest. Why? Because when people make money by having money, they lend money and then they get it back with interest. They are not creating any real physical economy. They're not creating any real wealth. It's sterile. And pretty soon they end up having way more money than everyone else. You get a creditor class, and the government is in debt to them. And municipalities and states are in debt to them. And they have all the power. So there should be a monopoly on lending money in the hands of the state, so that credit can be assigned strategically in the interest of an economic program of building up the country and making it economically more prosperous. A state monopoly on the lending of money, state banks that strategically lend money in order to have projects to rebuild the country, in order to make a more prosperous neighborhood. You know, if the government and the state bank determines that it would be better to have more home ownership, they'll start giving out mortgage loans to working families. If the state determines that we need more businesses in this area, they'll lend money to people to open barber shops and restaurants and coffee shops, etc. If the state determines that we need a big infrastructure project, they'll lend money, right? The idea is that the strategic assigning of credit based on what is in the interest of the community can enable the economy to function in a rational way, not based on the chaos of the market. And step number 4 would be then enacting an economic bill of rights, the right to jobs, the right to housing, the right to education. Roosevelt advocated an economic bill of rights in his presidency. We should advocate the same thing. An economic bill of rights, ensure that people have the right to jobs, healthcare, education, and housing, right? It's pretty basic. That 4-point plan, that's a serious political program. Many Americans would be for that. If you put that to a referendum vote, those 4 items, it might pass. Now, it might not. They would go over the top against it. There would be a huge advertising campaign against it from the oil companies and from the big banks. There would be an all-out effort by the rich and powerful to stop it. But I think in their guts, most Americans would be in favor of it. Most Americans would believe that such steps would make the country better because it would make their lives better, to have more infrastructure in their communities, to have a source of revenue that would benefit their communities in the long term, to have, the ensuring of jobs and healthcare and education for everyone in their communities. It would make a better life for their community. Most people would advocate such a program. But in order to enact such a program, you would have to push back the power of the big oil monopolies, push back the power of the big natural gas companies, push back the power of the big banks. In order to get such a program, you would absolutely have to push back so much capitalist power. And that's why it's a program that we should be approaching the broad masses of people with. Because it's something that seems completely rational, but challenges property relations. It puts forward the property question. Right? That's what such a program would do. And that's the way communists should be organizing. They should be offering solutions. Not outrage, not anger, not tear it down, burn it down, but real solutions to the problems facing the country. And putting forward those solutions and challenging the rule of capital, advocating a program that would make a better life for working people. That ultimately is what those of us who believe in Marxism should be doing. It's about advancing the class struggle. That's what we should be about. And that's what I aim to do with the Center for Political Innovation. I aim to put forward a message that is coherent to the broad masses of Americans of how socialism and anti-imperialism could make their lives better. And secondly, I want to then teach people who do take this seriously, for whom this isn't, a LARP, a live action role play, for who this isn't, and a chance to yell at their parents, but for whom this is serious politics. I would like to teach them the history of our movement, the revolutionary tradition. I would like to engage with them and study the history of various revolutionary organizations and what they've accomplished. Study the concepts and the teachings that have built this movement. Study the successes of socialist societies and socialist movements that have existed in the past. That's what I aim to do, to approach the broad masses of people with an agitational program full of solutions about how to make their life better, by putting forth the property question, by challenging the property of capitalists. And I would like to build up a core of people who study this stuff and who want to know the history of the revolutionary movement and want to make this their goal, their purpose. They want to organize around this. They want to make this tradition that's been around for hundreds of years. They want to make this tradition their own. They want to continue it. They want to do revolutionary work in our time. That is what I aspire to do with the Center for Political Innovation, and we're doing it. And I've had quite a bit of success doing it this way. If you're looking for something different, good luck. And we've always allowed dual membership. That's another thing. I mean, the Center for Political Innovation has never been a party. We've always been a think tank. And we dropped think tank recently because it wasn't accurate. We're not really an academic group. We're an educational project. We are a socialist educational project. We want to educate the broad masses with a program to make life better, with educational demands, with anti-imperialism, etc. We want to educate cadre, people who want to be revolutionary organizers, about the history of our movement, about the program and the struggle. It's an educational project, and maybe someday it will help lay the basis for something that could call itself a revolutionary party. But part of the delusion, and forgive me for repeating myself, I do repeat myself a lot, but the communist groups in America, they all have a dual delusion. And it's scary to watch because it's two things that they believe, neither of which are true, but are very contradictory. If you talk to the PSL, you talk to the Socialist Alternative, right? You talk to any of these groups, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the Communist Party USA, they all have this dual delusion. It's terrifying, honestly. It's a scary level of doublethink. On the one hand, they think they're the vanguard. These groups have a few hundred people in them at most. No one knows they exist. No one's ever heard of them. They don't have any members elected to public office. They don't have influence anywhere. No one, like, they're completely irrelevant. But in their minds, they're the vanguard. They're the Bolsheviks. They're going to storm the Winter Palace. They're going to become the ruling party. They are the government. And it's like, no, you're not. You're an irrelevant sect. Average Americans have no idea you exist. They have no idea what you believe. No, you are not. No, you are not. The Communist Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the PS, you ain't the vanguard, my friend. You're an irrelevant sect with a few hundred people at most. Not even that, honestly. No, you ain't. You ain't the Bolsheviks. So that's the first delusion they have. The second delusion that they have, and this is so weird because on the one hand, they believe they are the vanguard. They are history's chosen. They will be the ones to make the revolution. All the other groups are fake. They are the true. They will take power. That's the first delusion. And it certainly isn't true. And the second delusion that they have is that they're completely powerless. Well, we just have to vote for the Democrats. Nothing we can do. We're too small. We're too ineffective. There's nothing we could do to change the conversation. There's no way we could really impact the discourse. We just got to vote for the Democrats. We just got to build abortion protests. That's a trendy liberal cause. That's something we can do. You know, we just got to have rallies around Trayvon Martin or whatever. Who's that guy? And, the guy, I don't even remember his name, the guy who shot up the protests, the Black Lives Matter rally. We just got to do whatever's trendy among liberals. We just got to have protests against Donald Trump around the latest trendy liberal cause because there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. We just have to tail after whatever the liberals are doing. We just have to go along with whatever is hip and trendy among liberals because there's nothing we can do. We couldn't change the conversation. We couldn't push the conversation in a revolutionary direction. We couldn't possibly get people to think about socialism more. No. There's nothing we can do. No. We just have to go along, vote for the Democrats, do what liberals are doing. Oh, it's so sad. Oh, boy, I'm just going to vote for the Democrats. Oh, boy, nothing I can do. We're irrelevant. Nothing we can do. It's hopeless. Just go through the motions. And it's like, you can't be both of those things. You can't be both of those things. You cannot be both of those things. I mean, you can't. If you're the vanguard, you ain't irrelevant. And if you're irrelevant, you ain't the vanguard. You cannot be both of those things. And the reality is that, yes, you're not the vanguard. And if you think you're the vanguard, if you're LARPing that we're a democratic centralist, we're the, grow up, right? Because you ain't, stop playing pretend, you ain't the vanguard on the one hand. Second hand, you could have an impact. Imagine if all of the Communist Party's resources were spent knocking on people's doors and putting forward a program to change the country, things could change. Imagine if all the resources of the Revolutionary Communist Party or the Socialist Workers Party were spent running candidates for office who had like a 4-point socialist program to make life better in the country. They could have an impact, right? Imagine that there were teams of people out in the streets promoting socialism every day. Imagine that there were high-tech YouTube channels that were being funded the same way the BreadTube channels and all of that were promoting the idea that Russia is not our enemy, that China is not our enemy, that our real enemy is the Wall Street bankers and imperial. I mean, you can have an impact. You can have an impact if you choose to use your resources and your strength and your manpower effectively. You can have an impact. You can definitely have an impact. Look, Diane Sayre from the LaRouche organization. She's not a communist. She's a LaRoucheite. She ran for Congress against Chuck Schumer. She had an impact. They had billboards. They had people out on the street. I mean, she definitely had an impact, right? Mass public relations campaigns, outreach. engaging with people, knocking on people's doors, educating people, putting forward a real socialist program, you can have an impact. You can have an impact, but no, you ain't the vanguard. No, you're not on the verge of taking power. And this dual delusion that I see on the part of socialist groups, this dual delusion, where on the one hand, we can't possibly do anything. On the other hand, we are the shit. We are the only ones who matter. Break out of both of those. Realize your actual size. Realize your actual abilities. That is what we need socialist groups to do. Because when you realize your actual capabilities, when you realize your actual power, when you realize I can't do this, but I can do this. I can't do this, but I can do this. Then you're able to advance. And this applies on the individual level. If you think you're Superman and you jump off a building, you're going to die. You know, I mean, that's the reality. I mean, if you believe yourself to be Superman and you jump off a building, you're going to go kersplat, and that's going to be the end of you. However, if you believe you're not capable of doing anything, if you believe, oh, I couldn't possibly get a better job. Oh, I couldn't possibly get a better girlfriend. Oh, I couldn't possibly work out more and be in better shape. No, there's no hope. There's nothing I can do. Your life isn't going to get better either. Right? Part of getting your shit together in personal life is coming to terms with, I am capable of doing this. I am not capable of doing this. I am going to make realistic goals and do what I'm capable of doing. I am not going to try to do things I'm not capable of doing, but I'm also not going to be disempowered and think it's all hopeless. No, I'm going to figure out what it is I'm capable of doing, and I'm going to do it. That's just part of being a rational, sane individual. If you want to have your life in order, you have to have a realistic sense of self, and you have to say, I want to do X, and I'm capable of doing X, and so here is what I'm going to do. You have to make a plan. You have to make a plan, and you have to carry it out. That is part of living everyday life. You make a plan and you carry it out. You make a realistic plan. You figure out realistic steps in order to carry out your plan, and you do it. Pretty basic. Pretty basic stuff, but it's hard for people. Right? The people running your phone don't want you to think that way. Oh, no. They want you to think you're powerless. They want you to think there's no future. They want you to think it's hopeless. That's what they want. At the same time, they also want you to have delusions about your own abilities. Right? They want you to think you're a rock star and a superhero, and also there's no hope and you're not capable of anything. Right? This is a direct result of the brainwashing that we're all getting from social media, from Netflix, from television. It's very effective what they are doing. And it's not just the socialist movement. It's all of humanity has been gotten into this duality. Everyone wants to be famous. Everyone wants to be a rock star. Everyone wants to be, a super famous person. And no one has any drive anymore. No one has any drive. No one has any will to go out and make sacrifices. And it's like, you can't be both. You can't be both. And it's weird. I meet so many people in my life that have this mindset. And it's not just the socialist movement. It's individuals. They think they're powerless. They think life is hopeless. They think they can't do anything, on the one hand. On the other hand, they have ridiculous aspirations. They think they are going to do ridiculously impossible things. And the two delusions reinforce each other. As long as you think life is hopeless, and as long as the goals that you're making, or the dreams, or the visions that you have are completely absurd and ridiculous and unattainable, they're going to reinforce each other. And that's the situation that the socialist movement is in, and that's the situation so many people I meet, that is how they think. completely hopeless and completely unrealistic aspirations. And the two, and they alternate between the two delusions. I am hopeless. My life has no future. I can't do anything. And, oh yeah, I'm going to be, I'm going to make millions of dollars. I'm going to win the lottery. No, you're not going to win the lottery, right? You're not going to win the lottery. You're not going to be the next James Bond, but you're also not hopeless. You can fix things in your life. You can move ahead in your life. You can make goals and achieve them. But in order to do that, you have to have a realistic sense of self. And the reason that CPI has had so much success in the short time we've been around, we had an amazing conference in Chicago. We had an amazing, event in Lynn Valley. We had an amazing conference in Austin. We got mentioned in Newsweek. The reason we had all the success that we had is because we sat there and we had this realistic sense of self, this realistic ability to sit there and go, this is what we are capable of, and this is what we will do. And we made goals and we carried them out. Now, obviously, there were some problems, some mistakes, temporary disillusion or whatever, but we're still here. And now we're back at the drawing board. We just had a great meeting. A couple days ago. And we're already back at the drawing board making realistic plans, saying, look, this is what we're capable of doing. This is what we've done in the past. This is the resources that we have. We're already doing that, right? And we are the only socialist group that seems to be doing that. That seems to be sitting there saying, this is what we want to do. This is what we're capable of doing, and making realistic goals and carrying them out. And that's just basic. But in order to do that, you have to be in touch with reality. And you have to be honest about what your real purpose is. And most of the socialist groups, their real purpose is not their stated one. I mean, let's just be honest. The real purpose that most socialist groups serve is they're not trying to actually bring socialism to America. They're not actually trying to have a revolution. They, whether they admit it or not, they are, in fact, more or less, they are functioning as the hit squad, the goon squad of the Democratic Party, the upper levels of capital, to suppress a revolt of lower levels of capital. That's what they're doing. And they don't want to admit that. They want to pretend that that's not the case, but that's what they are ultimately doing. So I guess I just wanted to rant about that. I've got 3 super chats here. But since I've only got 3 super chats, and because it's almost 3 p.m. and I've got something I got to do at 5:30, and I'm going to be on stream later tonight, I think I'm going to go exercise now. I'm going to go exercise. I'll be back on tonight, 9 or 10 o'clock, probably 9, maybe earlier, maybe later. I'm going to be back on tonight. I'll answer the 3 super chats tonight. And I'm going to have a stream tonight where the opening remarks will talk about current events. We're going to talk about Carrie Lake. We're going to talk about Amazon layoffs. We're going to talk about Poland. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things. So I'm just going to go exercise now. I got the 3 super chats and I appreciate them. I'll be back on later tonight, to talk about stuff, but I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go exercise, going to go sweat, going to go eat after that. Got a meeting at 5:30. And then I'll be back on later tonight. And, I just felt like coming on here in the middle of the afternoon. Didn't give very much notice. It was like 20 minutes notice. I just hopped on here. That's fine. I'm here. I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to be back on later. That's how these things work. But I guess think about what I said here. I don't know. Maybe if what I said here is not of interest to you. Maybe what I said here is not the kind of things we think about. But it's the kind of things that made this community valuable. Is we sat there and we critiqued the socialist movement. And it's a valuable, important service. So, I'm going to be back on later tonight. Be sure to tune in tonight when I'm back on. And we'll continue this conversation. But yeah, I mean, think about what I said. I've got the 3 super chats. We'll do them tonight. Yeah, I'm going to go exercise now. So, yeah. Tune in, folks. Talk to you later tonight. Catch you on the other side.